Welcome to Tripod Live, the NRL punting preview. Come to you every week, break down every game from punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. I'm back for year 12. I'm sorry, I'm 20 minutes late to start the season. I'm just OCD. I just cannot start the pod until I'm completely prepared. But it's a bad habit because I promise you guys a certain time, and I will keep striving to be better. Sorry about that, guys. And I hope that we can have an even better season this year. We are proudly presented by BetBank.ai, an all-in-one sports betting analytics tool. More about them later. Odds and exclusive markets this season are going to be brought to you by Unibet. More on that later as well. We're so back. Thanks for jumping in the comments. I can see plenty coming through. I did an announcement video on Sunday, so I won't repeat all of that. The first 5 minutes of the video was like how to follow this season, but basically it's one show every week. It should be 6 p.m. Sydney time, 5 p.m. Queensland time. Apologies again, I was a little late today. And the next 10 minutes of the announcement was like the decisions I made over the off-season to keep the tripod viable, really trying to pull back the curtain on the business for a 12th straight year, including and introducing to you our major partner that I just mentioned before, BetBank, who are making the show possible, certainly to keep it free this year. You're going to see and hear plenty more about what BetBank have to offer this season. I'm thrilled to work with these boys. It's a punting tool made by punters for punters, but also the lads are long-term members of the Tripod group, and they are so excited to share the tools that they've built, which are tailor-made to enhance results for all levels of punter. I teased that we could have a bookie on board. We do, and I'm actually really excited to share the plans we've got with Unibet. They're really coming to the table here, guys. And as I always say, what can you do for our audience? And there's a lot I can share. Let's just say the mixed matchup will be resurrected in 2026. And it's not just something for new customers either. If you're an existing customer, okay, even if you haven't had the best experience in the past, we're going to work with everyone and look after everyone. So tonight, I've obviously looked at all 17 teams. We're going to dive into them next. I've got a bunch of tasty multis that I've cooked up in Winnie's kitchen, but also just some futures plays that I believe are good value that you could set and ride throughout the season. Thank you to everyone who is joining us in the chat. We couldn't do it without you, so please hit like on the video, just comment, interact as we go. Let me know where you agree or disagree or other factors that are in your mind about each of the 17 teams. As I say, it's 12 years in. I couldn't do this without you guys, and I promise I love doing this as much as ever. If you caught my announcement as well, I have doubled the number of children in my household. Really, my wife did all the hard work over the weekend. Thanks for all the lovely messages. Mum and Bub still going great. It has been a bit of a whirlwind. I don't want to make excuses for why that I'm late, but I've had a lot on my plate. But I promise I've put plenty of hours in this season or into this season preview. But maybe give me over under 2.5 mental blanks if you can give me a little bit of grace, just because there's been some sleepless nights out there. But I think there's some teams people are sleeping on as well. So I can't wait to talk about it all and share it. Predicting the NRL season, I say this every year. To do it in February, it's a fool's errand. It is impossible at the best of times. This season feels really tough, but I don't sit on the fence. I'm not going to waste your time. I've got some strong predictions, and I have ranked all 17 teams in order. I'm not giving you in and around here or there and trying not to be too wrong. I've ranked them all 1 to 17, so I'll tell you all, and you can tell me if you agree. And how about we just get into it? Hopefully I can remember all my sort of graphics to put up on the screen. Let me know if I forget to change team graphic or something like that. Do I hit all my notes? I think I have. So I'm going to go in order of how the teams finished last year, but including the finals, which means we're going to start with the 2025 NRL champion Brisbane Broncos. So all these odds I'm going to quote thanks to Unibet. When it comes to my best players, I'm going to give you the best price on the market. But Brisbane, $4.25 to win the comp, $1.12 to make the 8. Came fourth on the ladder last year. Have lost Cobbo, Hetherington, Smoothie, have gained Tuffa and Anderson. I'm not going to name necessarily every player lost in game, but just the ones that I think are significant. Look, Brisbane are as formidable as any side, of course. I look at how can they get better. You're going to have Ezra Mann for a full season. And this team is never beaten, no matter what the score is in games. They're going to keep fighting. They're so fit. Like, let's just remember how close Brisbane was to being beaten in every finals game. They're down 16 late in Canberra, where it was a fortress down there for the Green Machine. At one point, Brisbane had 2 men in the bin. Canberra just one. You probably shouldn't have been there. Don't forget, if you don't get a penalty for a hit on Walsh on a 2-point field goal attempt, you don't even get to extra time. Then the Raiders thought they won it, but a fingertip got that try overruled before Hunty's winning moment there. And then 2 weeks later, the Panthers, I can't remember the exact numbers. Maybe you got it in the chat there, guys. Panthers was something ridiculous, like 90-0 when leading by double digits at any time in any game in the last 5 years. And it was 14-0. Brisbane hanging by a thread in defense. Any more points probably condemns Brisbane, but the Broncos hang on, get 3 late tries, repel the 4-peat champs, and Suncorp, as loud as it's ever been, sends them to a grand final. And even in the GF, the Storm, I would argue, with the strongest side of 2025, were up 10. And Kamikamica is fingertips away from making it 30-14, like a 16-point second-half grand final lead. But, of course, Walsh denies him. How many ridiculous plays did he have in that grand final? Renault gets injured late. Hunt gets injured. You think about the line breaks by Pappenhausen, it just looked like he was scoring for all money. And Brisbane, to win any one of those games, that would be memorable. That would be remarkable finals victories. But Brisbane won all 3 of them. And the form of Walsh, it goes back to what he did in the latter stage of the season when Reynolds was injured. Who else was out? Was Hunty was out for a little bit, I want to say. But, the team really was leaning on Walshy. Even Billy Walter stepped up. But basically what Walshy did to propel the team into the top 4, because they had to beat Melbourne in round 27 as well. And then, of course, what he did in those finals. And then probably the greatest performance by an individual ever in a grand final too. So it was just ridiculous. It broke a 19-year premiership drought, and that included in that span 2 of the most heartbreaking grand final defeats imaginable. So you have every right to still be on cloud 9, Broncos fans. Then you get the Payne Haas bombshell. That is more of a, next year story. I immediately did think, is Madge just pushing him too hard? Is he thinking about his career longevity? I did also wonder if it's an ability to maybe get a get out clause for NRL, for Rugby 360. And then the more you hear about it, it's really that strong connection with Wayne Bennett. Who would have thought he still has it? I forgot that Payne debuted under Wayne. Some will say that's going to rattle Brisbane, but I could argue that now there's a last dance vibe to the team, that you've only got this generational prop in the squad for 1 more year. Of course, it's Reynolds has announced his retirement as well. So, the team could really band together and say, let's go and grab another premiership. That's the question. Is the hunger there to win a comp again? Because they had to work so hard. You could argue, well, now they definitely believe in Madge's methods because they're proven. On the other hand, you've given everything you had last year. Are you willing to do it all again? That's what we're going to find out. And I mentioned Reynolds. He is getting on. He has had injuries. Ben Hunt too. There's a lot asked of Walsh, Carrigan, Payne Haas, and they all play rep. And if any of those guys get injured, it does reduce the ceiling of this Brisbane team, who are now the hunted, which I think just makes every week a bit tougher because everybody gets up for the champs, right? But then I feel like that gets offset a little bit by the fact that Brisbane gets, not half their games at home, but 14 of 24 at Suncorp because of Magic Round and because of the Dolphins derby. So I couldn't keep Brisbane out of my top 4. They are a genuine threat of going back-to-back. In fact, they are 4th on my ladder. So we go to the Melbourne Storm because they, finished 2nd last year. They were 2nd on the ladder, but also 2nd in terms of being runners-up. $5.50 for the Prem, $1.20 to make the 8, thanks to Unibet. 17-7, but also the best points differential, plus 212 points across 24 games last year. Lose Pappenhausen. Now you can say, well, Farlongo is a pretty handy replacement. Lose Nelson. They did rely on Big Nas a bit less last year. Lose Jonah Pezzett. Well, he was sort of halves backup anyway, and you do still have Wishart in terms of covering key positions. The biggest loss of all for me is Eli Katoa. It's just disgusting and brutal for Melbourne what happened to Katoa in that Pacific Championships match. And that's the player of all of them that really can't be replaced for Melbourne, and that does hurt Melbourne's ceiling this year for sure. Now, key gains, Moali can do a job in the middle, and they already got that improvement last year with Yuto Kamanu, especially sort of second half of the season. But I've got, of course, the asterisk, Zach Lomax. We don't know, but I tell you, I even had a lawyer friend, I hope he doesn't mind me messaging, or saying that he messaged me today suggesting that Lomax, is going to ultimately be allowed to play. It looks like the Eels are not going to win a case, sort of restraining trade there. I know it is a bit hypocritical of Volandis, who said, go to 360, get a 10-year ban, and now somehow the NRL are backing up the Storm to let Lomax play because it's a better product if he's playing, because he's in his prime and he is a superstar. And it is hard to discuss Melbourne's prospects when you don't know if he's going to be there or not. But I get the feeling it's trending towards Lomax plays. I think they could really use him. Yes, they've already got two awesome wingers in Coates and Warbrick, but I tell you, I think Lomax can be a world-class centre. Could he even play fullback? And you need a goal kicker in this team as well. Well, Meany's a solid kicker, but, Lomax, apart from when Origin's on the line, is an exceptional kicker. It's still a world-class spine, of course. I could question if players like Jerome Hughes and Munster are past their peak, and they did both get injured last year. So I do think the team maybe takes a step back because they just probably aren't as strong as they were last year. And I talked about Katoa being such a big hole, but it still was the best team for the regular season last year, really, in terms of plus minus points differential. So I still see Melbourne as being in the hunt. Can't keep them out of my finals, but I did put them all the way down in 7th. That could be a little low. What do you guys reckon? 3rd last year. Now, Cronulla didn't finish top 4, but I'm calling them 3rd because I guess equal 3rd because they made the prelim just in the order that we discussed them. And so let me put the Shark logo on the screen so you know who I'm talking about. So Sharkies, $19 to, again, the order I discussed it is what they finished last year. $19 to win the comp, $1.70 to finish top 8. Did finish 5th on the ladder. Losses, Daniel Atkinson, but he was barely utilised. And key gains, really none to note. But that makes it a very settled squad. And this team was in the fight in the Melbourne prelim. They've been knocking on the door for several years. I would argue Cronulla maybe is a star playmaker away from being over the top. I actually thought Lomax would be like the perfect addition for someone like Cronulla, but obviously he prefers the opportunity in Melbourne. But I still like Cronulla because of that squad depth and that continuity. And I've said for a couple of years, there's like no Origin disruption because basically the team plays well, but nobody stands out enough to get picked for Origin. And then the news this week with eligibility, that's probably going to change because I think Fanua Blake has to be one of your props for the Blues, but still it's not much disruption. And Cronulla let themselves down in the middle of last season. I don't think they'll make the same mistake this year. So I really feel like if Cronulla's consistent, they will win a lot of games. And I actually have them in 2nd place on my ladder. So this is where I'm going to actually share some futures bets with you guys. And I did type them out beforehand. These are all things where it's like, oh, it's taking me time to set up these graphics, to type these things out. But I want to make the show as quality as I can, even though, man, I was a little late off the mark. So these futures bets are brought to you by BetBank. Always get the best price. They're not best bets because my best bets will be week to week, $1.80 to $2. They're tracked each and every week. They have been for 11 years. We've shared over 5,000. We've won 59% of them. But these are still plays I advise. Like I would have my own money on anything I share as a tip tonight. And if you like Cronulla and you agree with my reasoning, you might want to weigh in on these. So top 4, Sharkies at $3.75 on 365. I really like that. I think they're going to make top 4, if not be very close. And $9 on Ladbrokes to make the grand final as well. Once again, I think they're in the mix for that. Next up, we go to Penrith because Penrith also made a prelim last year, even though they did finish only 7th on the regular season ladder. The Panthers are $5.50 in the premiership market, $1.18 to make the 8. Losses, Schneider, Laurie, gains, Cogger is back, Freddie Lussick, Tom Ale. So really not great disruption. You could say that for the first time since this Penrith dynasty began, that there are no major losses after the season. And the way I look at this Penrith team is that, of course, they had a horrific start and they were bottom of the ladder at mid-season, right? But if you look at June onwards, so June, July, August, September, right, this team won 12 of 15 games that they tried in. They actually lost one to Bulldogs that they mailed in. But you basically, when Penrith tried to win, they won 80%, 12 out of 15. And the 3 times Penrith didn't win was a golden point loss to the Raiders, a golden point loss to the Storm. That's the best 2 teams in the comp. Or hang on, if you're going to say, well, Brisbane are one of the best teams in the comp. The other loss was to Brisbane, of course, in the prelims. So the only 3 losses were basically against the 3 other best teams in the comp, and they were all down to the absolute wire. So basically, you can't question the level that Penrith can play at. And I could see them, Penrith, learning lessons from the slow start last year. I could see the side regrouping a little bit for another major title tilt. I look at the best players. They've racked up a lot of Ks, but at the same time, they're still all basically in their prime. So I think Penrith's in and around the top 4. I actually couldn't squeeze them in. I did put them 5th. Let me know where you have the mighty Penrith Panthers as we move to, where are we going next? We're going Canberra Raiders. First in the minor premiership, but we're knocked out in the second week of the finals by the Sharks. The Raiders, and I'm just going to tell you this right now, I've got the Raiders missing the finals. So this is probably one of my most bold takes, is there's so many good teams this year, but I'm going to take the team that finished top of the ladder last year and tell you that they won't play finals footy. And I'll tell you why. Fogarty's out, moves to Manly. Trey Mooney to the Knights, as well as Pasami Solo. The Raiders do gain Jaden Brayley from the Knights. Now, this is a team that won 19 of 23, not even counting the 24th game that was mailed in, right? So 19 of 23 winners, 11-1 at home, the Green Machine. The only one loss, I believe, was a 20-point lead blown against the Bulldogs, and I'm sure that cost me a best bet too. But then they lost in straight sets in the finals. But that Brisbane game was just a killer because the Raiders were so close to a 2 weeks off and a home prelim. I talked about how close that game was already. And then the next week couldn't recover. A strong Sharks side, and you lose Strange on the eve of the game, right? So I guess Sanders coming into 7, that's the big change. You'd say there's a lot of young players in this team who should be on the rise. So that's like, how can I keep out a team that's got quite a bit of youth and already finished first? But it goes back to, there's too many other good teams. I can't fit them all in the 8. So there had to be some really, strong omissions. I mean, even go back to the odds. I thought, like, am I going to sound crazy saying that Canberra are outside the 8? But at $1.60 to make the 8, like, it's not a certainty. So if you're certain that I'm wrong, I guess you take that $1.60, you put it in your season futures. But the team that's $1.60 to make the 8 is like $2.40 to miss the 8, and $2.40 is not that crazy. So, like, even the market probably understands that just there's too many quality sides and they don't all fit into 8. And I say this every year, it's always way harder to leave teams out. But this I will admit, this was the toughest omission for sure. So just look at the intensity that Canberra played with. I'm not certain that can be repeated. And I also look at a lot of close wins pulled out time and time again over multiple seasons now for Canberra. And mathematically, that's not likely to continue. Your sort of results in close games will regress to the mean. It's not that I think Fogarty is a huge loss, but I do see Sanders as a bit of an unknown. And I love other playmakers in this team, like what Owen Paddy showed, the rise of KO Weeks and Strange. I'm a huge fan as well. But I also look at Canberra sort of ambushing a lot of teams last year. Last year, they were one of the favourites for the wooden spoon, and I think they just beat teams just weren't really prepared for that level. You don't really get that same surprise factor when you've won the minor premiership. Again, such a strong year. I'm sorry. Team that was first last year are going to be in 9th for mine. So did I shock you guys there? I've got another pretty bold take coming up. I think I teased this as well in my announcement. I'm not sitting on the fence in this show, which makes me very vulnerable to be criticised if I get any of these wrong, because I could be way off. But I see the next side, the Canterbury Bulldogs, as the 2026 premiers. So once again, let me know if you disagree. but I'll tell you why. Average footy fan does talk about the signing of Kobe Black. That is worth mentioning too. Like, would he get a chance? Because he was highly touted for Brisbane, and it could be, he could be a discarded gem in the way that Weeks was. Who's to say that Black can't go on and be a star half in the league like he was expected to be by many knowledgeable footy minds in Brisbane, and then Brisbane got the opportunity to sign Pezzett and sort of squeezed Black out. So that's fair. And the Bulldogs have got a new halfback as well, and he came mid-season last year, and it was, major headlines. And some people argued that it derailed the Bulldogs, but I'll explain why I think that's actually a strength of this side. The bringing Galvin into the team and having a full preseason to actually understand the systems and mesh with the side. So $13 on Unibet, Bulldogs to win the comp, $1.54 to make the 8. Finished third on the ladder last year with a 16-8 record. Lose Reed Marnie, but Hayward was already sort of transitioned to that starting 9. And then the key gains, Leo Thompson, Dykes, and Sean O'Sullivan. So last year was the highest ladder finish for the Dogs since 2012. And they did ultimately exit the finals in straight sets. But again, so close in that first week of the finals in Melbourne. And injuries really hurt, like losing multiple outside backs, including Crichton, who's their best player. And Thompson, despite the injury, that is still exactly what the doctor ordered for the Bulldogs. And I look at Galvin, and some say he's not a natural 7, but I've seen so many successful running 7s that can develop their game management. When you've got a 6, that's such a good boot as Burton is. And some say, you could play Burton a different position. Like you could play Burton centres because he's got a great running game and he's played in the rep arena at centre. That would allow Galvin to play 6, for example. But I think Burton is a prototype 6 as well with his running kicking game. I think I have to have Burton in my halves because of his boot, basically. If I was picking the Bulldogs team, I genuinely believe that Stephen Crichton should be the fullback. I know he's the world's best centre. I understand that at right centre, Crichton just locks down that side defensively. He's just insane. But I think in the modern game, the amount of influence that fullback has, that I would play Crichton there. And then, Kiraz could move in and play centre. You've got Cherry, right? I think there's enough strength in the outside backs. And I just wonder if there's a little bit of a ceiling on this team with Connor Tracy, but he's still, an honest player. And that's all talking about attack. But the thing is, the Bulldogs led the league in defense last year, right? And that's going to go a long way. And I mentioned you're getting Thompson, you pair him next to King, who I felt like he dropped off after Origin, but he was playing at a level to get picked for Origin. Edge forwards like Kickow and Preston, that's as good as it gets. There is a lot of depth in this team. Great coach, as I said, like Ciro came in and picked up a cellar-dwelling side and had a tough first year, then got him to the finals in 2024. And the Dogs probably should have gone further, just missed top 4, lost a wild game to Manly week 1, could have won that. And then last year could have gone further. Yes, sort of blown away. So people remember how their season ended against Penrith. But I think part of that was injuries, catching a red-hot Penrith side, and deflated from a narrow loss in Melbourne that I mentioned before. I think this year the Doggies are getting to a grand final, and I have them first on my regular season ladder. So let's play some more futures bets. Brought to you by BetBank. Identify real plus EV bets. Let me bring up my Doggies bets if you like the sound of everything I've just said. So to make the top 4, you're looking at $3.60 on Dabble. Again, I really like that. I like that even a little more than Sharks. Top New South Wales teams, that's regular season, $9 on Ladbrokes. So you got to, you don't have to finish higher than teams that were above them last year, like Raiders, Storm. Obviously, the defending champs are not non-New South Wales, Brisbane. So I think $9 for top New South Wales team is quite appealing to me. Made the grand final $6.50 on 365, and to win the premiership, the best price I found was $14 on Sportsbet. Let's roll across to the Roosters, who lost in the first week of the finals, finished 7th in the end, and this season are $9 to make, or to win the comp, I should say, $1.40 to make the 8. Average footy fan talks about no depth at hooker for the Dogs. But I was pretty impressed by what Bailey Hayward was able to bring to them at that position. So, I mean, yeah, I don't want to say for every team, if there's key positional injuries, it changes my opinion. It sort of goes without saying. But I really like the forward depth on this team and like utility value as well. I think there are other guys like, I suppose, Kurt Mann comes to mind that could easily get in and do a job at hooker as well. Probably Sean O'Sullivan, who's added to this squad. You got Woods as well. Not saying he's a hooker, but I believe he's injured at the moment, but another young gun that adds a bit of halves depth. So back to the Roosters. 13-11 last year, came home strong. I don't really have any major losses. Am I missing anyone? I feel like the team just added Reece Robson and Daly Cherry Evans, as well as Tommy Talau. Now, Cherry Evans, who is 37 this year, is trying to emulate, I suppose, Cooper Cronk, going to the Roosters to add another premiership. So he may only play one season. Sandon Smith, I potentially should have mentioned Sandon Smith, but that's a fair point. But not a major loss to me anyway. And then a little bit of a changing squad for the Roosters in the sense that Angus Crichton and Nwanga Tuaze will go to rugby union, but that's post this year, and I'm sure everyone will be fully focused, and they know they've got a great team. And what's really in the Roosters' favour this year is that last season looked entirely set for a rebuild, and it allowed Robinson to blood a lot of young talents. I'm looking at the guys like Rob Toya, mentioned Marky Mark, Nafua White, didn't debut last year, but really got a bigger role for Ketty. Now these guys are established first graders. You might argue, how's it going to work with two halfbacks? I don't see that as being a problem, because I think you've got great playmaking to the left or the right of the ruck. Teddy was just in vintage form last year, and then you've added the Blues hooker to the mix as well. So my concern is probably that everybody loves the Roosters because they can see what they did last year and they should only be better. So I sort of wanted to leave the Roosters out because I was like, well, DCE is quite old. You can't expect Teddy to replicate what he did last year. But I just think they're such a smart team with coaching and Teddy and DCE and Walker. And the decision-making on the field and the end of sets is going to be as good as any team in the comp. And there's enough, rep stars in the pack and out wide for that matter, that this team will win their fair share of games. I couldn't deny them a final spot, so I ended up putting the Roosters 7th as they were last year. Now, Unibet sponsors the Roosters, so say what you will about the Unibet app, and I'll talk about that soon, but they really do get behind rugby league. They are the major sponsor of the Roosters. That does open some opportunities for this show. I won't go into everything, but there's going to be like a heap of Roosters gear we can give away, tickets to games, but actually merchandise for all sorts of teams. I'm working on something where we can give away one of our followers $1,000 cash prize as well. There's going to be promos for the Roosters every single week. Okay. And they've got one for the season and it's pretty juicy. So I'll let you know, especially if I like them. But at the moment, what Unibet have for the Roosters is the Roosters sponsor special, and it's $4 for the Roosters to have equal or more wins to Penrith. Now, that should be just over $2. They're both basically on the same line in the market. I've got, I think, Penrith 5th, Roosters 7th. But just for that price, I think if you like the Roosters at all, you're going to be in the mix. And $4 for something that's much closer to a 50-50, is great value. And that is what we're always looking for with the pod. It's not necessarily this will happen with long shots, but it's all about the price. And of course, if something's going to happen more than 1 in 4 and you're getting $4, that is the definition of plus expected value. Next up, the final side that made the finals last year. I hope I haven't lost the Warriors logo. No, here it is. Because I don't want to be accused of, any bias against the Warriors. Well, I will tell you straight up, because I know we always have a lot of Kiwi brethren in the chat. I'm sorry, I've got your 12th. the Warriors. They are $26 to win the premiership, $2.35 to make the 8. Finished 14-10 last year, have lost Bunty Afoa, have gained AKP. So this was a team that I admit won 9 of 12 before the injuries, and they lost their best forward. I know they signed Fisher Harris, but I'd argue Barnett's form. He was lost, I think, just after Origin Game 1, and Metcalf, of course, was out as well at that point, and neither played the rest of the season. They both were out for the season with knee injuries, and they were tougher, the Warriors, than typical New Zealand sides. So you've got to tip your cap to Webby and what he got out of the team. But ultimately, the Warriors, they did fall off a bit without 2 of their best players, as you'd expect. Now, there are some really exciting stars coming through. You look at Leotawa, Halasima, now I'm going to butcher the name, Vaumunga. I just couldn't fit this side into my 8 when I thought their best 2 players are coming back off like ACLs. You're not guaranteed to hit the ground running and be at your best form, and New Zealand do rely on those guys. Leaning on key position players who potentially are getting older, like Fisher Harris and even CNK. I just have a little bit of doubts over the attacking game of New Zealand, whether they are short a game-breaking outside back as well. And, of course, Metcalf's not going to play the first couple of months of the season. So I've got him on the outside looking in, like in the finals hunt. I'd love to see him do well, and I know that we're so hard to beat at Mount Smart. But they were the team where, do you disagree with me? Look at everyone that made the finals last year, and everyone looks really good again. But then there were some other sides that I couldn't deny that I had to put into my top 8 this year, and we'll get to one in a minute. And so somebody had to come out, and the obvious candidate to come out was New Zealand, who maybe did overperform a little bit. JK says, second half of the season, the Warriors will come home with the wind in their sails, like opposite to last year. But, of course, that's once Metwar gets back in there. The reason I talked about having to make space in the finals is because there are a couple of sides I think are going to be really threatening who missed out last year. And, okay, I put my cards on the table. You guys all know the drill by now, but I suppose if you're new to the show, welcome. I am a diehard Dolphins fan, okay, and I really rated the team last year and talked them up, and I think we found a lot of value backing the Finns last season, but I love them even more this year. So if you think I'm biased, call me out now. Tell me where I'm getting it wrong. The Dolphins are $23 to win the comp. Top 8, they are $1.95. Finished 12-12 last season. Have lost Kerr, Nichols, and Bromwich. I don't see any of them as major losses. Have gained Selwyn Cobbo, Morgan Knowles from the UK could be under the radar, and essentially gaining Tom Flegler after 2 years, essentially hiatus from the game with the shoulder injury. Now, 1 win short of the finals 2 years in a row, scored 720 points last year, which is the most by any team ever that missed the finals. I look at Katoa was superb, and he's only going to be a year older. I just think the time is now for this team. Hammer and Herbie are as good as any outside backs in the comp. I'm not expecting a huge amount of out of Flegler, but you bought Saifidi and then he got injured last year. Gilbert's had injuries 2 straight years. You unearthed Plath, but then he got hurt. Right, he'll be back this year. Bostock was one of the gun wingers of the comp. He's going to be back. Donahue was emerged last year as well. Look, a freak injury to Marshall King is not ideal in the preseason, like slipping and doing his knee. And that does allow Donahue to probably start at hooker early on. But the thing about the Dolphins, they could score with anybody, but they could not contain other teams when other teams had the ball. And the Dolphins got steamrolled in a lot of games. And I think just give them any fair skerrick of injury luck, and the Dolphins will actually be able to stay in the fight against teams and hang in there and actually potentially win the forward battle. And then with forward ascendancy, the Dolphins are incredibly hard to stop with the playmakers and with Isaiah Katoa being that special. So I really think this is a team with so much upside. Am I seeing it with red-tinted glasses, perhaps, but I have the Dolphins finishing in third. And you can get $4.50 on Unibet for the Dolphins' top four, if you like where I'm coming from there. If you like the cut of my jib, let's put up my tips. $4.50 on Unibet for top four. Top non-New South Wales side at $11. And that's on 365. And I put an asterisk just because I really like that. Because I think the Raiders will regress this year. I think Storm same. And I've talked about Brisbane being hunted. So if I maybe see the Raiders, Storm, and Brisbane slightly weaker than the market, and then I'm sky high on the Dolphins, and I also love the Sharks and Bulldogs, but they're not going to affect top non-New South Wales team. I think $11 is an outrageous price for that. And make the grand final as well. $13 is just value for the Finns because they're like 21 to win the comp most places. So most bookies are around the $10 mark. Put on Ladbrokes. I think sleeping on the Finns a little bit, $13 to make a GF because I do see that upside there with the young guns that have come through, that have been brought into the team, but also the players that have been injured that potentially can return and find some of their best form. Now, I'm aware that I have shared 3 different teams to finish top 4, but they're all like $3.60 plus. So you really only need 1 to hit and you're in profit, and you sort of clean up if 2 hit. And if you do get 1 in the top 4, of course, if you have backed all 3 because you're just following me, like you're going to be in the mix, to make a grand final. If we get a couple in the top 4, we've certainly got a great shot there. So that's my thinking that I like all these teams, and there's nothing actually stopping them, like a lot of these bets getting up. And while, of course, backing multiple, runners when there's only 4 spots, it makes it harder to win them all, but it does increase the likelihood of at least getting 1 up and sort of covering your outlay there. And those best bets, or not best bets, sorry, but those futures bets, once again, were brought to you by BetBank. They help you convert promos properly and track your performance accurately. And since we've talked about half the teams, let me talk about BetBank a little bit more because I'm really excited to introduce them. Tripod members who use the code TRYPOD are going to get a free trial to utilize BetBank. So everyone's going to get a chance to use them because they are a subscription service. And even if it's not sort of your style or in your budget, at least you get to try it for free. And then pod members are going to get 50% off for the first 2 months. So usually their subscription is $75 a month. You would get it for $37.50 for the first 2 months. And again, it's by guys who are long-term members of the pod. And the founders are so confident that you're going to love the tools that are at your disposal that I'm going to introduce and that we're going to showcase in the group how it works, that they are very confident that once people try it, that a lot of people will stay because it will show that it pays for itself with all the advantages you get and the tips that you find or the bets that you find that you would never have found otherwise. So we're going to literally get tutorials going in the group, and the guys have even offered to do face-to-face consults with people to teach them how to use the best of the tool. It's dynamite for US sports as well. Now, I say all that. It's a bit of a lull in the sports calendar right now. There isn't much US sports on. Even All-Star had an All-Star break. And, of course, there's no footy until March. So I'm mentioning the code, but I wouldn't rush to sign up to BetBank yet. I would just say when footy returns, please, I hope that you guys can reflect my appreciation for a business like that, showing a lot of faith in me. And in return, I just hope that many of our audience members will give them a try and then see for yourself and let me know what you think. Let's keep moving. Manly were 10th last year, so they're going to be up next to discuss. I've got them for the wooden spoon. Is Undertaker in the chat? Let me know what you think, guys. So from one extreme to another with the Dolphins, talking about making a grand final potentially, and then I go 1 spot lower, Manly, and I have them for the spoon. They're $41 to win the comp, $3.50 to finish top 8. Sorry, I'll read some comments too. Colt, they're saying, really keen on Dolphins this season, roster stacked with quality across the park, top 4 for me. So like that. JK liking the look of the $11 as well. Barney, Spoon, Oath, Siebes, Stench. I'm still not a believer in Siebes. I've got to be honest with you. What about last year where he played Olakuatu late in the year and said, we only thought it was a 90% chance of re-injuring his shoulder. And of course, he wrecked his shoulder and didn't play again. Look, you lose DCE, Tommy Talau, Matt Lodge. Obviously, losing your captain's, the big one there. But you do replace him with Fogarty, Hetherington, and Docker Clay. So this is the first season since 2011, or since, what should I say? I think since 2010 with no DCE. 2011 was when Manly won the comp, and of course, Cherry Evans was the halfback. Now, last season was cruelled by injuries, so if you want to argue for Manly to improve this year, I suppose there is that. And the season was very much disrupted, especially when a month or two in, DCE told everyone he was leaving, and that sent shockwaves through the NRL, like that your captain would walk out on a club when he's that close to retiring as a one-club player. And you lost Olakuatu, I mentioned before, so when you did lose like your best forward, you got room to improve, I suppose. And I could go one step further and say you've replaced a 37-year-old halfback with a 32-year-old halfback. That's not necessarily a downgrade. We know that DCE's got, a resume that Fogarty can't compare with, but the form of both players last year, it could be somewhat of a lateral move. But then I've just got question marks over a team that's top heavy and relies a lot on the new captain, Tom Trbojevic. If he goes down, how's this team going to find ways to win games? Paseka, off a season-ending injury, that they really need him up front because I don't think the side has a particularly strong pack. But again, sometimes players off a major injury are not always 100%. What's left in the tank for Jake? Brooksy, same sort of boat. And I even want to read into the fact that DCE left. He spun it as it was about the respect that he wasn't shown with the offer. But realistically, all DCE wanted for the end of his career was a chance to win another premiership. And I think he left because he didn't feel he was a genuine chance of doing that at Manly. So I've put him 17th. It's that close of a comp. You win a couple close games here or there. You won't necessarily get the spoon. But I do have them thereabouts bottom four, and I've gone to the extreme because somebody has to be. Well, next we've got Parramatta. I already saw Based Aussie says Eels top four at $5. I know a lot of people do like the Parramatta Eels, who missed the finals last year, finished 11th. $21 they are to win the comp this year. $1.90 to make the top 8. Losing Dylan Brown, Zach Lomax, of course, gaining Jonah Pezzett and Jack DeBellin. So this team got 10 wins from 24 games under Jason Ryle's first year of leadership. The season was derailed quite early with Moses out for an extended period of time with the foot injury. That they showed plenty at the back end. Iongi is a star, so that was a great pickup because they lost Talangi to Penrith, but they gained Iongi from the Panthers. So I think that's a fair swap. And who picked Addo Carr to be so rejuvenated that he would play for the Kangaroos? So that was a great pickup as well. I just don't see a premiership pack with the Eels. Again, I think every team I've put in the top 8 is so good this year, and I couldn't put Parramatta on that level despite having a stud 6 and 7. It's an exciting halves combination. It's going to be a team you're going to love to tune in and watch, but I do think they'll really miss Lomax. I thought Lomax was sensational for him, and it's a shame he only played one season in the blue and gold. So while Parramatta are popular, I've sort of looked elsewhere, and I've got them all the way down at 13th. Barney, Manly, and Cows, 2 he likes for the spoon. Ryan, like Fogarty, forward pack looks rough. I feel the same with regard to Manly. Colt, agree with you, Winnie. Not a fan of Seabold, make or break. Agree that too, that the pressure's on. And Sam says Manly around 13th, never won the spoon. There's worse teams. That's fair, but I think even if you think they're 13th, that's that may only end up being 1 or 2 wins away from 17th, because I really think every single team can beat other sides on their day, can beat mid-table sides on their day. And that's why, what I say today, I'm not married to those opinions. I watch every minute of every game each week, and it's about trying to find who's going to excel that week. So I could just as easily pick a team that I've picked for the spoon and pick them to beat someone in round 1 or 2, So it's a journey that we go on. It's a roller coaster. It's not set in stone, and everyone's level is not stagnant for the season, and injuries and form and just being wrong about our early season assumptions all have to come into play. So we try and keep it fluid. Sam says Eels superb coach, superstar Ayongi, but pack too light, 9 week. So that's why he's got him. Although he does say that the 167 is strong enough to have him bottom of the 8. So it depends how you see that. And then if the Eels forward pack steps up, then suddenly with the class that you do have in the spine, then you're not going to be surprised if the Eels do make the finals. I mentioned it just before. They're $1.90 chance to make the finals. So right thereabouts at Pick'em to make or miss. So I'm sure opinions will be split there. I actually prefer the North Queensland Cowboys, who are about double the price of the Eels. $36 to win the premiership, $3.40 top 8 on Unibet. Finished 9-14 last year. Lose Robson, but they do gain Reed Marnie, the Cowboys. It is Todd Payten's 5th year, and his best season was actually pretty long ago now. It was 2022, right? So there've actually been some struggles since Payten got him, close to a grand final appearance. And it was, of course, the Eels who denied the Cowboys up in Townsville in that prelim. And I think these are similar teams on that note, Parramatta and North Queensland. That's why I can't understand why the Cowboys are double the odds of Parra, because I sort of look at, Drinkwater is another star of the game when he's in form, and did and showed everyone, winning the Wally last year, that he's one of the very best halfbacks in the competition. And I think fullback and halfback about the 2 most influential positions in the game. So it's really, what do you make of the rest of the team? And again, I think the forward pack, maybe 1 or 2 star players short. And it probably comes back to the fact that you're paying $1 million to Taumalolo, and that's just brutal. Need a big year out of Nane because he sort of regressed a little bit after bursting onto the scene. I really thought I could squeeze Cows in my finals, and then I realized, no, there's just too many good teams, and I ended up putting the Cowboys in 10th. But definitely think that they'll be very competitive, improved on last year. And another team where the coach is under pressure, like we said, Seabold for Manly, that's the same boat for Payten, but can go the other way. And actually, the Cowboys have got a pretty favourable early draw, so they could get a good start, which could springboard a really solid campaign for 2026. So definitely not riding off the Cowboys, just in a 17-team comp where, genuinely there's like 12 teams that look like they've got a finals roster and finals merit, then you can't put them all in. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, like making excuses for some of these teams or for my selections. I could say similar about West Tigers. I like that roster, and I think that they're going to be in a lot of games, despite being $67 to win the comp, $4.25 to finish top 8. The record last year was 9-15, which was 13th. Again, Kai Pearce-Paul and Bunty Afoa. I don't have, unless I've lost my note, I don't have any major losses for the Tigers. And I can't think of any off the top of my head. So that's a plus. 9 wins last year was an improvement after 3 wooden spoons, of course. And I feel like the spine is settled now. Well, you've got Luai definitely at 6, Buller at fullback, Coruscant at 9. Then whether you go Fainu or Dewey, who was quality at 7 when he got opportunities there. This team is targeting their first finals appearance since 2011. It has been a minute, but with no big losses, I guess you lost Galvin mid-season. I feel like that they can put that behind them. I know the Tigers will be fun to watch. A Benji coach team always will entertain, but to get to the next level, the Tigers are going to have some grit about them. That's the question mark. I have this side also in the mix, but I couldn't squeeze them in, of course, so I had them 11th. Next up, the Cardinal and Myrtle. It's the South Sydney Rabbitohs, $21 to win the premiership. If you want to back them top 8 on Unibet, $1.91 to make or miss. Also 9 wins last year. Lost Davey Moali, gained David Fafita, Adam Elliott, Bronson Garlick. And I want to mention, when you might have forgotten, that a really important piece was basically non-factor last season, apart from a few minutes in round 27, Cam Murray. One of the very best middle forwards in the competition, and he was ready to play in round 27 last year. So he gets a full preseason under his belt. So think about how much better South Sydney will be just bringing back Captain Cam Murray alone. Yes, it was the worst result in Wayne Bennett's career last year, when they finished 14th. But once the writing was on the wall, Bennett didn't push the Bunnies. He knew it was a lost season and he didn't want to burn anybody out. And the team just sort of cruised and gave some minutes to some young players coming through. And look, this team, actually, it was the first time South didn't make the finals. No, I've got that wrong. Sorry. My note is Souths have not made the finals since Reynolds left. So a lot of people questioning that. Of course, you go back to 2021 and Wayne gets there and they make a grand final and lose it and then haven't gotten back since. But I look at the talent like Latrell, you've got Cody Walker. I think they can get a lot more out of David Fafita than we've seen in the last couple of seasons, and it'll be like a slap to the face of the Titans that suddenly he's motivated and playing well again. I can just see it happening. Johnston needs, 3 tries to break the all-time record. He's going to do that early in the year. Like, they all play on the left side. Potentially Whiteman can play on the left side too, but I think if Jai Gray's the fullback, then Latrell's the centre. Like, what a scintillating left side that is. If Souths keep their key men fit, question mark over who's your halfback, sure. But I would also argue one solution could be Cody Walker becomes a halfback because he's that experienced. And then, of course, Whiten is your 6. And don't forget Campbell Graham. I feel like he's had a lot of injuries. He played for the Kangaroos, 3 or 4 years ago and then just hasn't been able to stack games together. The forwards pack a great punch. And think of it this way. I think a lot of people are saying, next year, when Payne Haas comes next year, they can threaten. So if you think Souths can win the comp next year, let me ask you this. Is Payne Haas so much better than Keon Koloamatangi that Souths are no chance this year and then might win the comp next year? Like, if you think they might win the comp next year, they're going to be damn good this year when all those guys like Latrell and Cody Walker and Jack Whiten are a year younger. So I think people are sleeping on Souths in a major way, and I could not leave them out of the finals. Let me know what you reckon about this pick. But I've got Souths 6th, and I have them a major chance of threatening this year. Sam, so average Souths fan, Souths have the same side this year except with Keon. That's my point. I think he's made the exact same point. Like, if everyone thinks they're going to win the premiership next year, it's the same team, except some of the best players are probably closer to their prime. And Keon, like, don't forget how good he is. And there's a reason why he's got nearly $1 million a year to go to the Dragons. So yeah, took the words out of my mouth there. Average footy fan. Sam Rogers says, Totola, Murray, Fafita, Graham, Big Ends, must be top 8. Is 9 and 7 are risky. You got Mamazelos there, but yeah, who they go with at 7? Is it Glover? Was really good in reserve grade for the Dragons last year. And then, I'm not a big fan of Bud Sullivan, but he's, an option too. I think you solve 7, then you're going to be really hard to beat for the Bunnies. So I really like this team, could not deny them. And then just speaking of the Dragons, who also missed the finals last year and ended up finishing 15th with 8 wins and 16 losses. They are 100-1 to win the comp. They are 550 if you want to back them to make the 8. Lose Jack DeBellin, gain Daniel Atkinson. This team, St. George Illawarra, has not played finals footy since 2018, but they did lose 8 times last year by 6 points or fewer. So I talked about how Canberra can't keep getting away with this and winning all the close games. The Dragons aren't going to lose all the close games. Now, I don't want to simplify things because when you lose by, less than a try or 1 try in it, that's 1 play in it, that's 1 bounce, that's 1 knock on, that's 1 moment flips the result. But it is a fact, I believe, that gun halves and having a class half wins you the close games. They can be the difference in a close game. And I do think it wasn't a coincidence that the Dragons were lacking in that department and kept finding a way to lose the narrow ones. So, of course, there's pressure on both Flanagan's, the coach, and the 5'8". I think they want to play Kyle at 6 and play Atkinson at 7, which is curious to me as well. You got Lycan King Tonga, an option there waiting in the wings. So if the results aren't there, then, Flanagan has to drop his son surely, and he's going to be reluctant to do that. I look at improvement that you're going to get out of the Couchman brothers. Ryan's coming back. Hamish Stewart is a stud. But then I sort of look at the important players last year, Gutho, Cookie, Val Holmes, they all integrated well, but I just don't think any of those guys can do much more than they did last year. I know Val got injured towards the end of the year, so if you get more games out of a guy who is also your goal kicker, that's something. But they're all players that are past their prime, and St. George knew that when they signed these guys, and I questioned the move. Like, why are you buying players who are not going to pull you to a premiership? They're just going to pull you maybe a little closer to the middle. So this side just doesn't merit enough for me to put them in the finals hunt, and I ended up having them 16th. I've got St. George Illawarra. Even though I know they'll be really tough, they'll be hard to beat. They probably will win some games ugly, and they probably will surprise teams. And because nobody rates the Dragons, as Inter 101 says, Flano ain't dropping his son, even though no one rates them, like, that's probably why they'll be good value to bet on in terms of the point spread. But, in talent alone, I can't see them as close to, a lot of the sides that I've put above them. We move to last year's 16th place team, the Gold Coast Titans, who I've been, mistakenly too high on in the last couple of seasons. I got to put my hand up. $81 to win the comp on Unibet, $5.50 to finish top 8. Only won 6 games last year, so that, as I said, was 16th. Now loses for feeder. Foran retires. AKP goes to the Warriors. They do sign Lachlan Ilias, but that was a question mark to me because Hannay promised him, I can develop you as a halfback. But then I think that the Titans' strongest side would be Kinney at fullback, Brimson at 6, Campbell at 7. So was Ilias sort of promised that he'll play first grade? I'm not sure, but he may get the start. Is Brimson still injured? Sorry, I should have all the injury news up to date, but that question mark, maybe you guys can help me out in the comments. This team just avoided the wooden spoon last year. They've cleared their deck a little bit so that they will have money to spend. Tino's re-signed. It's a new era under Hannay. There's lots of raps about him, what he has done at Cronulla, and he was a caretaker at one stage and in the Queensland setup too. Losing Kinney was a major blow last year, so you got to remember Kinney was the Titans' best player in 2024, and then he barely got to play because of the neck injury last year. The team leans on him a lot. Campbell is another player that is relied on a lot. So if either of those guys are out, the team loses ability to sort of compete. While there's a few talented players that makes the Titans exciting to watch, really to win games, they've got to be tougher. And I thought maybe Des could instill some toughness in this team, but actually it was the same old Titans under Des, and it was a team that self-sabotaged time and time again. Now, there's room for improvement. If you shoot yourself in the foot all the time and you're able to just stop doing that, if Hannay can sort of stop the self-inflicted wounds, then the team can improve alone. But it's a 6-win team, so even if you get a bit of improvement because Hannay is a good coach, I still can't put him too high on the ladder. Ended up with the Titans in 14th. Barney saying they feel like the Finns last year leak a lot of points, or score a lot of points but leak even more. And JK says the Titans schoolboy defense beach life. Yeah, you wonder if just living in a beautiful environment and climate for some reason makes it harder to just focus on your profession. Because, there's been years where I felt like the Titans had the talent but never the toughness. And sometimes you think that a new coach can change that. And it is possible. That's sort of harder to predict with the new coach because you don't know how a team's going to play. And speaking of new coach, let's talk about the Wooden Spooners from last year who are coached by now former Titans captain, or not captain, but a former Titans head coach in Justin Holbrook. And the Knights are 100-1 to win the comp, $6 to finish top 8. Also only won 6 games last year, and with a negative 300 points differential, was 17th. Good for the Wooden Spoon. Lose Leo Thompson, lose Kai Pearce-Paul. Do get Dylan Brown on the richest deal in NRL history. Do sign Sandon Smith, Trey Mooney. So you spend big on Dylan Brown. That's exciting. How does it all fit together with Sharp, Ponga, Brown, Sandon Smith? That's going to be the question mark. I look at Dylan Lucas. I think everyone can see he's all quality and potential rep player this year. And Bradman Best is out there on the left as well. So that's still a very dangerous left side that Brown's going to link up with. And then if Ponga's your fullback, then he's chiming in on the left as well. I can see that's where the points are going to come from for the Knights. I can actually see them scoring a few points. Holbrook was the attack coach at the Roosters before this gig, but then you haven't seen the returns in the preseason, and I read very little into preseason, which is why I haven't really brought it up, and why the only reason I waited till after preseason to do this pod is because unfortunately you do get some tough injuries out of preseason as well. So, that's one of the things I would be questioning is how are the Knights going to play and how much can they improve the attack? But the bigger weakness is the middle forwards and not there for me. So while they should be able to be very competitive, especially at home, I've only got the Knights 15th. I don't think they can cover the loss of Leo Thompson. And it wasn't an overwhelming forward pack before or when Thompson was there. Barney, blokes like RCG take the cash and then they put their feet up on the beach. That's referring to the Titans. Based Aussie took the Knights to make the 8 at around $6. We've got Dan Lever, shout out, one of the GOAT admins. How many Knights jerseys is he going to burn this year? And then someone, Interior Arts 101, where would you play Sharp? Like, I really would think about whether you play Sharp at fullback and you play Ponga in the halves. Or maybe you play Ponga at fullback, like in attack, but let Sharp go there in defense. I feel like he's that talented that you don't want to waste him out on a wing, and you don't want to just shoehorn somebody into halfback when you need your most talented players, in the key positions. So going to be watching closely. As I said before, new coaches, you want to see how those teams play and how it shapes up. But also, it takes time as well. So sometimes a new system is going to lead to sort of poor results as everyone gets to know it, and then you build the chemistry there, and then you get improvement later in a year, which is another reason why what your opinion might be early on a side can certainly change. But for overall season prognostication, I suppose I could see the Knights struggling early on as they do, try and integrate Brown and figure out the way that they want to play. Okay, that's all 17 teams. Please let me know your biggest agreements and disagreements. Let me share my season multis. Unibet have been good enough to let me cook up 2 season multis. Okay, here's what I'm going to say about Unibet. I didn't think they were going to be a major partner for the pod this year either. I was not a big fan, to be brutally honest. And I'll tell it to you truthfully, guys. Now, the app, to be kind, is very poor. It barely works on my phone. I've been told if you've got an older phone, it's even worse. So maybe if you've got newer phones, it's better, but I think it's a very laggy, weak app. So I don't know if young people, like if you're in your 20s, do you still put bets on your laptop? I feel like this might be one of those cases where here and there you just want to jump on the computer because it's a lot more easy to navigate and have some bets on Unibet, because what I'm promising you, it's going to be worth having them. They are going to give us mixed matchups back this season. We have got 2 ripping season future multi that I'm going to share on top of the Roosters special, and there'll be a Rooster booster multi every week, right? And the thing is, they're looking after our audience. So if you don't have Unibet, there's a link in the description. You can make yourself an account. I think a lot of our audience have tried them at one stage or another and potentially given up, and they're going to try and help you reactivate. So basically, if you haven't got a Unibet account, join and then message me, and then I'll let you know what we can do. If you already have a Unibet account, message me. So when I say message me, Instagram, Tripod Betting, DMs are open. Tripod, Facebook page, DMs. Or Tripod, Jacob Wynn on Messenger. Or email tripodbetting@gmail.com. Okay. When you reach out to me, if you've already got an account, that's going to allow me to look into, even if you had promos taken away, can we get them put back on? If your limits were low, can we get limits reinstated? So I can help people who have existing accounts, right? And let me be further transparent. You're going to be helping me because I'm getting paid for every new player and reactivating player that just jumps back in and has another punt with Unibet. So if you want to support the pod, I've got this buy me a coffee, option as well, because like the bills pile up, especially when my own choice to have another baby. But the pressure's on, and I got multiple jobs and I've got to make the pod worthwhile, but that's completely optional. I really don't want to ask anyone to jump on, buy me a coffee, even though some people kindly already have. But maybe share a little slice of your winnings if you want to, if I've really earned it, if we have a good year, and if you clean up one week. But another way to support the pod is literally if you join Unibet or jump in again and message me, like that is directly going to help me. And it's going to also give better returns to Unibet for jumping into this partnership. And I'm grateful for a business that's still going to get behind us, because I said before in the announcement, like so many bookies are avoiding the pod like the plague because the players are too successful. So to actually get a bookie with some balls that wants to take our audience on, I know their reputation isn't the best, and and they admit that, but they also are working on a new improved app. And I think when you get a sharper, app with a lot more resources on top of the markets that we're going to get, then they're going to be well worth having. So look, this bookie is not the best in the market in terms of every metric, but they're worth it alone for what they're going to bring to the table for our audience. As I say to you guys, that is my first question to anybody that wants to sponsor the pod. What is your product? What can you do for my audience? Not what can you do for me? Because plenty of businesses come and say, here's what we're going to do for you, but I got to sell everyone a lemon, and I would never do that. Okay. So not going to pretend that the app is not trash, but I am going to still say it's worth having in your arsenal. It does help me out if that matters to you. It's win-win the way I see it. And this is a beauty of a bet to kick off the season as well. It's called 9 Lives. It's my 3 favorite teams in terms of the market: the Bulldogs, the Sharks, and the Dolphins. And all they have to do is finish top 9. So it's Dogs, Sharks, and Dolphins to make the finals with 9th place insurance, that if one of them comes 9th, and don't forget the Dolphins were 9th last year, broke my heart, missed the finals by a game the year before, actually finished 10th. All right. But all 3 of those top 9, and that's $6 odds, and you can have up to 100 on that to win 500. That is an outstanding bet. You won't even get those odds for those 3 teams to finish top 8. And my long shot is similarly leaning into those teams that I like. It is Dogs top 4, which is my favorite top 4 bet, Sharks and Finns top 8, and Manly miss the 8, which I don't think is asking a lot. And that is $21, which you can have up to 25 on, which again is to win 500. I think I've got that right. So that's pretty juicy right there. And then the Rooster special, I said before, just get equal wins to Penrith at $4. Look, I went over. I thought I'd try and get under an hour tonight. I hope I haven't forgotten any other major points, but we got, another 30 weeks to talk. So thank you for your time tuning in tonight, guys. I really appreciate it. It's good to be back. I'm sorry I was late again, but reach out to me with regards to Unibet. So once you have an account, whether that means you use the link and then you reach out to me, or if you've already got an account, hit me up. I will help you as much as I can. Please just hit like, little things like just hitting like wherever you're watching this video, and drop a comment even if you're not watching live, because I go back and read the comments and I carry the conversation on, and I love discussing it. And I've had some pretty bold takes tonight, so let me know where I'm badly wrong, terribly wrong as well. I will see you in 7 days where we're going to preview the Vegas doubleheader. So that is, see you next Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. Lego.